right. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome to 2024. This is Torn Tuesday. Torn is the colloquial name of the OneRing.net, a website that's been around since 1998 or 99. And we've tracked all the movings of Lord of the Rings, all of these years, all of these decades, and now we're in a new renaissance of Lord of the Rings. Everything: movies, books, games, cards, toys, Legos, so much good stuff. And one of our longest contributors at the OneRing.net, which is an all-volunteer website, is Mr. Clifford Broadway. He is a writer. He is a producer of Ringers Lord of the Fans, the poster that's behind him right there. He has co-written several books with the staff of the OneRing.net, including The People's Guide to JRR Tolkien. He's also published many guest editorial posts in magazines and on websites like DeviantArt and
Famous Monsters of Filmland.
And Famous Monsters of Filmland. But today, here on January 2nd, 2024, he is your amiable host of this broadcast. Hello, Clifford.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Mr. Justin is a remarkable individual who has certainly set us up. He certainly has set me up, and I got to say thank you. That was a beautiful introduction. And my goodness, look at I got my light working now. How about that? What a beautiful way to start the new year. With an introduction like that, I've got my bright blue Hobbit cardigan vest because, hobbits are fond of bright colors. And altogether, it's been quite a journey. The new wave of Tolkien fandom seems to keep reinventing itself. I'm glad you mentioned it, Justin, because it's not just with a generation of fans looking at, a new television show or a new movie series, another movie trilogy. It's not really about that, as much as it is about people discovering the books at all ages. And then when you grow up a little bit, you've got your own kids, then you share those books with your kids. And this is how it happens. It's just really remarkable. The longevity is what endlessly fascinates me. The creativity, obviously. We have the most intelligent and most creative fans in our community, and we all know that. But the longevity of this community and the way that people continually find themselves attracted to Tolkien's work, it is perhaps really interesting that there's a lot of conversation we're going to be having today about certain artworks that go into the public domain. And everybody online is talking about Steamboat Willie, Mickey Mouse all the time, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's true. But it's also true that in dozens and dozens of countries around the world, J.R.R. Tolkien's works, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, just fell into public domain yesterday. In many, many countries around the world, including New Zealand. Including New Zealand. So, yeah, and this is going to do what? Well, we'll get deeper into the weeds in this conversation, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot more people getting access to these stories than they have had access to before. It's now going to be a whole different can of worms. And yeah, I think Tolkien fandom is about to reinvent itself yet again. Justin,
and
thank you for such a gracious introduction. Thank you.
To see these transitions happening, and we're looking at the chat right now on Facebook, on X, on YouTube, on Twitch, on Discord. I see all of your comments. Tons of viewers on X today. I guess they're improving the algorithms on that platform for distributing live streams. But the best part about the One Ring community and Lord of the Rings fandom in general is that it's always here. Nothing can divide it. Nothing can split it up. You can get busy with life. You go to college. You meet a person. You have a family. You go through some things. You get distracted with life, and you bow out of fandom for a while. But then you find a reason to come back, whether it's a brand new Lego set, whether it's a new TV show or a new movie or a new Japanese animated cartoon. There's so many ways to come back into fandom, and we're all right here. Some of the names have changed, but of course the personalities have all remained the same, and the creativity has always been there. Lord of the Rings is one of the top cosplay franchises, brands, I hate that word, groups of all time. And, looking at
True. That's true.
the history of this site, now that we've just passed the 20th anniversary of Return of the King, I have to say that Lord of the Rings might be the most memed movie
Yeah.
franchise in the
Yep,
history of
that's
the
quite true.
internet. It's not The
Quite
Matrix.
true.
It's not Star Wars. It's not Harry Potter. It's not The Simpsons. The Lord of the Rings
Haha.
has more memes of more quality, distributed more ways than ever. And because Lord of the Rings is so good that not only do hardcore fans get all the jokes, but everybody
Yes.
watched Lord of the Rings over the Christmas break. And so there were tons of tweets, and everybody understood it. And the best example I can give is in the last couple weeks, two big entertainment properties trended on Twitter for the last 2 weeks. One
Yes, they
was
did.
a prompt for 30 Rock clips, and thousands of people posted their favorite joke from 30 Rock.
Yes. Yep.
But and I was following it. Some of them are pretty funny. I never watched the show, so some of them were new to me, but some of them were
Yes.
funny. But they were getting 300 or 500 or 700 likes, and then someone created a Lord of the Rings Moneyball prompt. Moneyball, of course, is the baseball movie starring Brad Pitt, where they
Yes,
use
that's right.
the idea of algorithms to build a baseball team of 9 players.
Yes.
And the Fellowship has 9 players in the Fellowship. So,
Ah, yes.
so the memes
Yes.
started writing themselves. And instead of getting 300 or 500 likes, these were getting 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 likes each. The amount of crossover jokes between Lord of the Rings and baseball is
Who knew?
astounding. Who
Who
knew
knew?
that the Venn
Really?
diagrams
Yeah.
have never matched up? And then suddenly, at the end of 2023, we ended on this Venn diagram of baseball and Lord of the Rings, and basically everybody is united in a love and passion of Lord of the Rings. So I enjoyed seeing out the year on such a positive note. What about you, Cliff?
Oh, absolutely. That's so fun. Um, I ended out the positive note of the end of my new year by recognizing, I really did recognize that the appetite for uh, for JRR Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings has really never had a stronger grip on everybody. There's a lot to be made in conversation, and I've researched it and talked about it and done a movie about it. But when you're looking at what generations ago and the kids in the 60s were doing and how they embraced the Lord of the Rings, well, they didn't have any internet and they didn't have a way to organize and they didn't have a way to do that to make parties or events happen. And yet they did. There was the Middle Earth Rock and Roll Club in London, where, Frampton and David Bowie and early artists would play all the time. And then there was a group of young hippie kids who created Gandalf's Garden, which was an art and poetry magazine that was for your sit in, your peace in. And it was, we've got covers of these old magazines. How is it that you think about how strong our fandom is right now? I don't see any fans sitting together in their own garage putting together a Photoshop of an entire magazine. No. See, hardcore fandom way back in the 60s. And here we are instead of creating our own print magazine, instead, I think we created an online web portal. And that became the OneRing.net, a web portal where all these fans and artists and writers and editors would volunteer and put together news and reflections and conversations about Middle Earth. And it became as popular as it did just it's a real strong sign about that longevity thing that Tolkien still has after all these years. But when I ended the new year and I realized that we have another huge feature film for The Lord of the Rings coming out, The War of the Rohirrim. And all of a sudden, The Boy and the Heron gets to the top of the box office. Number one, never has a Japanese anime that is an original. I'm not talking about a Pokemon movie. because that's based on a TV show. But an original story, number one at the box office. And I'm telling you, when Lord of the Rings anime arrives, the appetite is just gonna, we're just gonna have another wave of that energy. So I realized it may be, you know, maybe long after I'm gone, as Chris Parada has once told us, he said, when I'm gone, I'm going to look back on the OneRing.net as an accomplishment of my life that I'm actually very proud of, that I think is significant. And I agree with that because, you've had a chance just by the love of an author, just by loving and appreciation of the people and the fan culture that is surrounding this book, all these books, plural, all of a sudden you have a community that goes around the world to different languages and nations and cultures, and they all come together. And tomorrow is the best night to celebrate because it is his birthday. Tolkien's birthday is, tomorrow on January 3rd, and we all get together and have a birthday toast at 9 o'clock p.m. in every time zone around the world. It is a global fan event, and everybody gets to participate. Costs you nothing. It's just an acknowledgement to the professor. Cheers. So yeah, there's something really special. People get to engage in this fandom, and it's just so inviting. It is an inviting and welcoming place. And I have to say, with the launch of the Rings of Power last year, things got a little bit rough and tumble around the edges, and we persevered in steering the conversation to a better, healthier place. And we can acknowledge that we were part of a growing sense of worldwide community that wasn't about excluding people or trashing people for their opinions, but just welcoming everybody under the umbrella in the same tent. We're all under the same tent as Tolkien fans.
Look, if the show is bringing you back into the conversation on our message boards, on our Discord, here in the chat room, maybe this is the only time you interact with other fans every week, and we appreciate you watching and being in the chat room with us. That's okay, and it's okay to be here even if you didn't really like the show, but you enjoy the community and the conversation around it. And that's what we're here for, is just community and conversation. We have so much to talk about because there's been so much Tolkien news in the last 2 weeks. In fact, in the last 5 days, there's been so much that we have a lot to cover. Before we get to our two big stories, which is Emmy Awards, which are this weekend, and Simon Tolkien. There's a lot of questions of how he's involved in all of this stuff. Now, we'll get into that. We'll explain. That way we can start the year with our eyes wide open of what decisions are made and who's making them. But let's get into some of
Let's look at how the sausage is made. We're going to look at how the sausage is made later on in the show.
Speaking of sausage being made, I don't like this sausage because as of January 1st, HBO Max, or Max, the streaming service, has removed the extended edition of Return of the King.
Boo. Physical media is king.
It is king. We all own a physical version, but the thing I liked about the HBO Max is it had the 4K streaming. If you had a 4K TV and a 4K Roku or Apple TV, you could stream it in 4K. And this is the extended editions. And it was wonderful to sit at Christmas and not have to dig out my discs and make sure the TV's on the right input. I could literally just go to Max and boom, there's all 6 movies, extended editions right there in extent. Well, not anymore. As of January 1st. In fact, there are reports on Twitter, X, that people were in the middle of Return of the King at midnight, as you are wont to do, to watch Return of the King at midnight, and the movie cut off, and they could not find it again after midnight on January 1st.
It cut off in the middle of viewing?
It cut off in the middle of viewing as the clock struck midnight. So right now, as we speak, in the United States, the extended edition Return of the King, Unexpected Journey, and The Desolation of Smaug do not have extended editions on HBO Max.
Okay. Someone make sense out of this.
Why those three movies? Why not
Yeah,
just take all of the Lord of the Rings
exactly.
off, or all the Hobbit off, or take the
Yeah,
theatricals off? I
yeah,
don't understand why you're taking part of
yeah.
everything.
That's super weird, isn't it? It's super, super weird.
But the good news is now that we're in 2024,
Hmm.
we are officially 2 years away from Peter Jackson's promised Unicorn Edition,
Oh my.
because Peter Jackson, many, many, many years ago, said in an offhanded comment, I'll wait until the 25th anniversary to put in all the deleted scenes. Cliff, you heard that.
I
25th
did.
anniversary? That would be
Hmm.
2 years from now. Year after next. We're that
Do you know what?
close to an
It's
extended.
If Peter keeps waiting and keeps waiting, then his movie's going to go into public domain by the time we get to the extended unicorn edition. That includes bloopers, outtakes, extra scenes that were cut, extra scenes that were conceived and filmed but then not used, and so much stuff. And you know what he did say? Wasn't it in the original director's commentary track where he literally said, "Oh, maybe we could save that for the 25th anniversary." And so it was 20 years ago he was daydreaming about the 25th anniversary,
Well,
it seems.
we're coming up on that, Peter.
Wow.
You better get to work. Moving on. Speaking of, Cliff mentioned this in the intro, but The Hobbit
Mm,
and Lord of the Rings has entered the public domain in most countries around the world because
hmm
copyright is the author's death plus
hmm
50 years. 2024
That's right.
marks the 50th. We are beyond the 50th anniversary of
Hmm.
JRR Tolkien's passing. So most countries, including the country of New Zealand, mean that it is public domain. People in those countries can do whatever they want, remix it, do it whatever they want with the text, make new
The
movies,
text.
but they cannot distribute it in countries that have longer copyrights, like the United States and the United Kingdom.
And and also the European Union in general. Okay, all the European Union is excluded because the language in this thing, and we can show the tweet. The language is basically any country or territory where the copyright lasts for the life of the author plus 50 years. And
That's
in the
what I
United
just
States,
said.
that's right, yes, sir. We're going to look at this long, long list, but New Zealand is not on this list, and it should
It,
be.
it, it,
New
it is
Zealand,
it is on the list because
yeah,
they say missed out New Zealand right there.
that's right,
Miss
at the bottom,
so
yeah. Mhm.
New Zealand is one of those. Afghanistan, Antigua, Barbados. Basically, if you're any Caribbean island,
Yep.
or
Or Nepal.
Morocco,
Or
or
Nepal.
or Nepal, or Iran, or
Hmm.
Iraq, or Jordan, Kazakhstan,
Okay.
Papua New Guinea, the
Interesting
Philippines,
that
Qatar,
North Korea is listed, but South Korea is not, which is weird.
Thailand. That's right, because South Korea is a different country with a different deal with the United States. Trinidad
That's
and
right.
Tobago, UAE, Arab Emirates. So, the very few countries are in a position, I think, financially and creatively, to take advantage of the public domaining of The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, except two: United Arab Emirates, who have all of that oil money, and they are making a lot of moves to be a video game and movie powerhouse country. They're funding a lot of movies and video games right now. So it's possible that
All right.
UAE may make some moves, and it's
Or
possible
Saudi
that
Arabia.
New Zealand might uh,
Yeah. Well,
play.
let's
And this
talk
is
about
what I
this for a
wanted to
quick
talk.
second.
Yeah.
Well, I want to let's explore the basic idea so that there isn't confusion. Okay, getting access to a public domain novel like The Hobbit. Let's start with The Hobbit. Okay, Lord of the Rings also, but it's just if you're in Egypt. Okay, let's go to Egypt. We're going to visit the pyramids, have a delicious lunch, and go and look at some filming locations where they filmed some famous movies, and then we're going to go to the printers and go to the print shop, and I can print my own copy of The Hobbit. I can print it in any way I want with my own illustrations, and I could do with it what I wish. However, I'm not allowed to um, try to convince other consumers that I was the creator of it. I can print it myself. I can remix the
Yeah,
text with
it's like
commentary or
doing a
illustrations.
performance of Pinocchio.
Right.
You could put yourself
You
on
can
strings and go perform as Pinocchio out there.
I could do a
No one would
show, a
shut you
stage
down.
show. No one will shut me down. I could make my own fun stage show with puppets, songs, whatever. Or I could do a remix type of print edition with comic illustrations, maybe. Whatever. Let's think creatively. And no one can say boo about it. However, in the case with Steamboat Willie, Mickey Mouse, now being public domain in the US, most copyright attorneys will tell consumers, look, the thing that you're not supposed to do is try to pretend that you're the originator. And you just can't fool or attempt to fraudulently tell consumers that you were the originator of it. That you're just supposed to say, I'm remixing or reusing this.
See,
Okay, that's the
this
basic
is
thing.
where that
Right.
bootleg author that got shut down and owes hundreds of thousands of dollars did,
Mm-hmm.
making an illegal
Mm.
sequel and then suing the Tolkien estate. He messed up. He should have waited a year. That way, he could publish whatever he wants in those countries,
Yeah,
not
in those
here in the
countries. Yep,
U.S. But he
that's
could
right.
go to Papua New Guinea and publish his Lord of the Rings sequel, and it would be
Yeah.
fine. That's
Yeah, we're
what
talking about the infamous Mr.
copyright.
Polychron. Yes.
That's what when they say it's not open source, but when they say it's in public domain, it allows you to do things like Polychron did
Mhm.
legally, but
Yes.
only in the countries where it's now public domain. To
All
be
right.
clear, the US, the UK, the EU, and most popular countries
All right.
are still under copyright for another 20 years for Lord of the
Okay.
Rings.
Let's look at Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol as an
Well, I don't
analogy.
want to get sidetracked on another example. I want to see what
Why
could
not?
people do right now. Let me give you an example of what
Well,
New Zealand could do right now. They could rename Matamata Hobbiton legally.
yeah, they could. They could legally rename it. Okay, sure. Um,
Do
a
you
bunch
do
of
you want New Zealand to adopt legally some of the names of Middle Earth?
we've got street names in Orange County. There's a neighborhood in Orange County with all Gondor and Rohan and Elrond street names all through Orange County. So,
They couldn't name Wellington Airport Isengard. Like
no,
that would have been out of copyright. But now that it's public domain in New Zealand, it is perfectly legal to rename
indeed.
Wellington Airport Isengard.
That's interesting. Not that anybody would, but yeah, you can. You can legally do that.
So
Maybe.
so what would you do if you lived in New Zealand, Cliff, and now it was all public domain? What would be the first thing you would want to do with public domain, The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings? And I'm watching
To
you
be honest,
chat. I want to know what you would do
to
if
be
you lived in New
honest,
Zealand.
I'm if I lived in New Zealand and I was anywhere near that infrastructure of the studios, the sound stages, and all those talented filmmakers and people who are down there, I would say, let's put on a show. Let's put on a show. That's what I would say. And because of my theater roots, my background in professional theater, I would probably hit the stage and I would look for a big enough and appropriate venue, a big theater, and I would like to get a lot of creative people involved, honestly, and do a big, big stage play of The Hobbit, a brand new one, a really great with really stylized puppetry and creatures and projections and stage effects. If anybody's seen Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, they can talk about some insane lighting and stage effects that they can do now. So I'm to be honest, you're talking to an old school theater man, and I would be the first one to say, hey guys, let's put on a show. Let's put on a show. And honestly, I can't let go of the idea that, A Christmas Carol by Dickens has been remade and remade and revisioned and reignited by so many different creative people, but the best one ever was The Muppets Christmas Carol. So maybe it's time for a Muppets version of The Hobbit. Hey, knock, 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 Jim Henson Studios. Knock, knock. Are you listening? Why don't we get together and do a Hobbit version with, the Muppets version of the Hobbit? Let's do it. Let's totally do it. I'm down.
That's fun. That's fun. Let's move on. We got other big news. A rumor just started this week. According to some leaked reports, Lego is planning to introduce a giant new Lord of the Rings Bed Door.
Oh no.
Pieces,
Oh no.
5,471 pieces in a Lord of
Oh
the Rings
no.
Bed Door. Yes, that is the Tower of Sauron, not Orthanc, like you would that some fans have created, but the Tower of Sauron himself in Mordor. It is planning to release, these are rumors, in June with a price tag of $459. So start saving your pennies, start saving your dimes, because this will sell out. It will sell out at that price, and you'll want to buy two. That way you can hold on to it and sell it for even more later. As we found out earlier this year
With the Rivendell set.
with the
Oh,
Rivendell set.
by the way, I was at the Westfield Mall, Century City, the other day. And guess what? At the Lego store, they do have one more Rivendell Lego set. Fresh box on the shelf. They have one. It's right there. And it's insanely expensive.
Of course.
But at least you'll pay less than what you would pay if you had to go to the secondary market on eBay. But yeah, oh my gosh.
Speaking of Lego Lord of the Rings, Lego Fortnite just released a few weeks ago, and everybody's been playing Lego Fortnite because it's like a Minecraft game, but official Lego. Well, check this out, folks. People are building Helm's Deep in Lego Fortnite. This is your first preview. Lego Fortnite is the
That's
type
so
of
cool.
game where you can explore, mine, craft, build, and create, and then you can share your server code. And so someone is already beginning to build out Helm's Deep on the terrain that's already in the game. So look, we'll keep tabs on that. Remember, we first reported when people started building Middle Earth in Minecraft, and now it's so huge they've almost tackled the whole map.
Look at how cool that is. Can we zoom in full screen on that? Because that's super cool.
It's I don't think it's gonna work if I zoom in, but Helm's Deep, Lego Fortnite, not Minecraft. Lego Fortnite. It's a free game. You can download it for free, create an account for free, and play it for free as much as you want. Like, it's a free game, so get on it. Cliff, I was wondering if you could give us some context on the other big news this week. Huge news as of yesterday. Queen Margrethe of Denmark, Europe's longest reigning monarch, has abdicated the crown after 52
Evidently,
years.
there was some family scandal. Evidently, and I don't know the details because I have not researched this too much, but there was some kind of scandal going on with one of her sons. And the queen was like, okay, if you all are going to behave like this, I'm going to get out of the sandbox. She doesn't want to play in the sandbox anymore. So she's abdicating the throne. That means her other son is soon to take the crown of Denmark.
That's right. And Queen Margrethe, the official explanation was she had back surgery this year. And as you know, back surgery is not just one, but she needs a couple more. It's pretty tough on the body, and she just feels that she physically can't keep up with the duties of being the queen. I believe that she is one of the last 2 or 3 women in control, in
of
leadership
a monarchy.
Of a country in Europe.
A monarchy. Do you mean a royal family structure specifically?
Not just a royal family, but I think there's a woman that is prime minister of Italy right now that we've talked about a few weeks ago, but there aren't many left, and now she's leaving it to her son, Crown Prince Frederick. But Cliff, why would we be talking about Denmark's queen on this show?
I'm honestly not sure.
Oh my gosh. You're the one that
There
told me
might
about
be
this.
there
Um,
might be some crucial connection that no one told me,
well,
but I don't honestly know.
Queen Marguerite of Denmark is famous for illustrating the Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit in the Danish translations. Who JRR Tolkien himself was very impressed with her artwork and
Oh,
considered
of
some of the
course.
best artwork, in page artwork, and some of the best covers outside of his own hand.
Of
Tolkien was a
course. Now I
big
remember.
fan. And
Yeah.
one of the first images I can share right here, of course, she drew Eowyn slaying the Witch King. How
Oh, wow.
beautiful is this piece of art?
How could I have forgotten? How could I have forgotten? This is so this is really, really cool. Um, her her work um was actually in the first Danish translation, right? And that is just so cool. Uh, it and then someone in the chat is mentioning that she's probably one of Europe's last monarchs to have met Professor Tolkien while he was still alive. Last living monarch to have met Tolkien. You know, Tim, that's a great suggestion. That might actually be true. And in in her royal career, the fact that she was so smitten with the works of Tolkien and was so enthralled with him that she, wow, look at these images. Wow, look at the armies of Sauron with the eye on their shields coming forth from Minas Morgul. That's really, really, really cool. Um, these these images, they're Smaug, and with the Arkenstone there on the top of the pile of gold in the background. Her her work, uh, famous famous for being not just any old regular illustrator in Denmark, but she was in the royal family and wanted to like celebrate her fandom. And what better way for her to be given the gift of doing all the illustrations? That's so that's just so fascinating to me. And thank you for refreshing my very poor memory about her. That's really super cool. Wow, would you look at that? The ring wraith. Um, Marguerite. Um,
Look at the ring race. I believe this is a representation of the ring race. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That you can kind of make out 9. Um, but just amazing. And of course, as queen, it would have been
well, when she was still a
complicated.
princess, okay, when she was still a princess, she wasn't queen yet. Okay.
Well, no, I disagree because she just abdicated the throne after 52 years, and we just celebrated 50 years of Tolkien's death. So she was
Yeah.
queen while Tolkien was alive.
It says here that she was still a princess. She created the illustrations for The Lord of the Rings while she studied in England. And the then Princess Marguerite used the pseudonym Ingahild Grathmer and sent her interpretations from the book to Tolkien in the early 1970s. She used the pseudonym Ingahild Grathmer. Isn't that fascinating? Didn't know that.
Man, I really want a book of her art. I just like her style of art.
Mhm. According to this Danish website, Tolkien usually did not want artists to illustrate his works, as he encouraged the reader to create their own pictures of the story in their heads. However, when Tolkien passed away in 1973, several black and white drawings were found with complimentary remarks written on the drawings. It was the drawings of Ingahild Grathmer. Tolkien was fascinated by the mysterious design and the fact that no characters were depicted. So she sent some samples that may be different from the ones we're looking at now. They were first published in 1977. Wow, how about that?
How about that?
Yep, that's
Incredible.
fascinating. It says that she was also versatile in costume design, scenography, church textiles, decoupage, works, embroidery, and paintings. Yeah, so she was quite the artist most of her life. How cool is that? I didn't even I didn't even have my brain put in place to think that is why she had such a significant impact on uh, the Tolkien um, fandom. Now, this means quite literally from these details that he didn't communicate with her. He never corresponded to her. It was after he died in 73 that they found his notes saying, "These are cool, these are intriguing. I like these."
Oh my
And then
gosh, Cliff, can
later
you
on after he
imagine?
yeah,
Can you?
like I can't imagine her. Imagine her just being a young princess and thinking, "Oh, good gravy." Maybe by then things had changed and she had really ascended to her title. Her full title is queen by the time Tolkien was gone. Um, Mathematically, that works out.
I
But
just
boy,
love
that's
this
really, really
Eowyn.
cool.
I mean, they look like
I love
woodcuts.
it.
Um, they're obviously ink drawings, India ink. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm just in awe, and there is something to be said, Cliff. And we talked about this
Oh,
a
I
few
love
weeks
it.
ago when we talked about the Prime Minister of Italy being a huge Lord of the Rings fan.
Yep.
Is You get a sense of the quality of the person leading your country when they are these big fans of Tolkien,
Hmm.
and it's encouraging. So huge news! Congratulations to her on a wonderful
Hmm.
reign
Yes.
um, of Denmark, and uh, I really want to see a copy of
I would
these
love to get a
books.
Danish copy. I would love to get my hands on a Danish copy. That would be, dude, that would be the coolest. That would be
Yeah.
so cool.
All right,
So, how cool.
our two big stories today are uh, Simon Tolkien and the Emmys, and so
Oh dear.
there's been a lot of questions of why is Rings of Power so controversial, especially among fandom, who are finding hard to find a way into the show because there's not
Hmm.
a lot to grab onto that's familiar. The lack of
Right.
familiarity to anything going on uh, makes the show a little more difficult to grasp than what we saw in Peter Jackson's movies, where you turn the movie on and you're like, yep, I read that when I was in third grade, and now I see
Ah,
it with
yes.
my own eyes.
Yes.
Um, but so now we can get to the bottom of this, and this brought up the Emmy Awards have Rings of Power of top of mind because Rings of Power, of course, is nominated for 6 Emmy Awards,
Yes.
including
Let's look at these categories.
original main title theme by Howard Shore. Incredible, Cliff! This will be Howard Shore's first Emmy Award and makes him one step away
Wow.
from the legendary EGOT. He already has an Oscar for Lord of the Rings. He has a
Yes.
Grammy for Lord of the Rings. This would give him an
Yeah,
Emmy
that's
for Lord of
true.
the Rings.
And then it needs to be a stage play. So he needs to go to Broadway and do a show on Broadway and get a Tony. And it may or may not be associated with Tolkien, but wow, get Mr. Howard Shore being there and Mr. Bear McCreary not being there is a bit of a hard bullet to bite, I think, for some of
They're
those
both
hardworking people.
deserving. They're both deserving.
They
But
are. Oh, yes, they're both
um,
deserving. But
so
here's the other, oh, you were going to say, go ahead,
well, I was
please.
just
Go
gonna
ahead.
say that this has probably the best chance to win um, in this
Mm-hmm.
category.
Mm-hmm.
Howard Shore is Howard Shore's theme for Rings of Power um, has the
Yes.
momentum, but
Oh, yes,
the
it does.
other awards that it is nominated for is main title design. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so the visuals that accompany Howard Shore's theme in
Mm-hmm.
the title also
The
out
vibrating sand, the sand that's making uh, patterns
it's
because of the sound waves.
what an incredible conceptual idea that rings back to
Hmm.
Tolkien's writing of the songs of the Ainur, right? Like That
Yes,
was the whole concept of the sand music intro is fan service.
it is. It is not mentioning anything about the Silmarillion, but is directly referring to the music of the Ainur, because that kind of technology, which is deeply fascinating, suggests that sound waves create physical patterns. When you change the frequency and change the modulation, suddenly you'll have different patterns that appear on these plates. And that means that sound is connected to physical creation. That in itself is just kind of a cool ass thing. It's incredibly cool. So yeah, I give them credit for that. And I believe these people listed here, Katrina Crawford, Mark Bayshore, are the directors here for this opening title
So
design.
we've explained why the titles are totally appropriate for Tolkien, why they work so well. But
Yeah.
Cliff, you were on set for the title announcement video. You saw them making the title announcement and pouring the lava and the liquid and the sand and the
The
stone.
the molten metal being poured over the wood grain with all the physical effects sparkling and
Do
popping
you
and
feel that
crackling.
that was a more effective title treatment than the one the
In
show actually has?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, I kind of like the thematic idea behind the vibrating plates that makes the sand change into patterns. I really think that's cool, but visually striking, that reveal, which is just the title, it was just the title reveal. It wasn't the opening titles of the series. It was called a title reveal, kind of like a gender reveal party. That might be a bad analogy, but I think the title reveal was so dwarven. It was like being in a dwarven smith's, and it was supposed to be evocative of an elvish smith because they're making rings. You know, do we still have a video of that? We must have a video of the title reveal. Let's show it. They
Yeah,
called
I'm just
they
playing
called
it
up some
without the
legends.
video, but it
Yeah,
looks great.
it really
Uh,
does.
you know, I
There's
uh,
there it is. There it is. Look at that.
I mean,
Oh my
I
goodness.
would accept this as the title to the show. Wouldn't you, Cliff? Like, if you're tuning in every
Oh
Thursday
yeah.
night for a new episode of Rings of Power, would you be happy to see this title with Howard Shore's music?
Oh
I'd
yeah,
I'd be
absolutely. Heck yeah. It's just wicked cool. It's just so cool. It's like, do you know why? Because it suggests the actual physical process of creation. And that's why
interesting.
the title reveal, more than the real what we ended up with as the actual episode opener, but this title reveal is so evocative of the process of forging, real process. And that is the power of creation. Um, and it's interesting because none of the Maiar or the Valar could create things, especially Morgoth was so jealous of the creations of Iluvatar. He was so jealous and wildly despised the fact that the men, the elves, were all created. Um, and so he decided to mock the creations of the living by making trolls and orcs and goblins to, so there's a lot of
Considered
subtext
discordant.
in both.
It
Yeah,
starts with a
exactly.
discordant tone. You know, if creation is founded
Way
through the
before. Yeah.
singing of the gods, uh,
Hmm.
evil is founded through a disruptive tone, uh,
Yep.
and it's the breaking of the music that is the start of the evil of Middle Earth,
The
and
introduction of his Discord. Yeah, the Discord of Melkor. Yes.
And that's what's interesting about the actual title that we have. It is a series
Hmm.
of discordant tones. It's
But
showing all of these
no, there's the
tones.
discordant one. You see, it has that black, those black grains snaking through the gold grains. That's the introduction of visually, the introduction of um the Discord of Melkor. That's what that is suggestive of. That dark snake passing through the gold grains. That's what that suggests to me. But I think both of them are really kind of cool. Um, you know, people just didn't like it. Some people didn't like the title opening, and they did say a lot on the internet that they preferred the forging, the metallurgy. It looks like metallurgy and
Well,
craftsmanship and forging is what it looks like.
my
So,
biggest complaint is this right here.
yeah,
The actual words on screen. You've just spent all this money and effort playing with sand and enhancing CG elements of sand. It all looks photoreal until
yeah,
this. And this is like
yeah.
Photoshop 101 with a blur filter. I mean, these letters don't look real. They don't look etched. They look like 1980s yellow font on screen. I mean, you might as well say
Oh
the
dear.
Love Boat featuring, the cast,
Oh dear.
special guest cast, with their picture on it. Like the graphics on the words The Rings of Power is the worst part of this. Compare that to the video we just watched with that wonderful titanium looking etched elven logo
Yeah.
embedded in wood and
Yep.
water and molten from steel. I mean, that was it. What else are they
That was
nominated
super
for
cool.
this weekend? Prosthetic makeup, outstanding prosthetic makeup. Of course,
Hmm.
all the orcs were prosthetic. That was one of the big worries that fans had
Yep.
going into season one. And Cliff, we were pleasantly surprised with the
Look at
quality
the
of the
nominee.
prosthetics, right?
The nominee is from the episode Adar, and that's when all the orcs were brought in. Yes. It says that the nominated episode is Adar, and that is when that character shows up, and of course he's flanked by all those pasty looking orcs that are trying to hide from the glaring sun. So, when they do
And
these nominations, they nail it down to one particular episode, so they pick whichever one out of the 8 would be the most representative of that category, and that's how they do the nominations.
Cliff, I
They're
just have
broken
to
up.
remind
Yeah.
everybody that Amazon, in their infinite wisdom, have let go of the entire Emmy-nominated prosthetics team and hired a whole new team to do all new prosthetics for season 2. So nobody nominated in this category is actually working on season 2.
Dude, too much irony. You know how many great shows are created and then get canceled by the streaming platform right after
The
they win a
good
bunch of Emmys? So, yeah,
the good news is they were replaced by an equally talented prosthetics crew who just finished The Last of Us,
that's
a
right.
show that I expect will win a lot of awards because The Last of Us
Mhm.
was an incredible show. What else are they nominated for? Outstanding special visual effects in a season. So
Mhm.
this isn't just for one episode, it's for the whole season. And as you can see,
Actually,
there are names
no.
from Industrial Light and Magic,
Oh, in a
Rodeo
season.
Effects,
Okay. Yes.
DNEG, Method Studios, Third Floor, and Weta Effects. This is the
Weta.
first
There they are.
confirmation that Weta Effects worked on anything. Of course, Weta Workshop did do some of the prosthetics and makeup effects and weaponry,
Yes.
but this is one of the first confirmations that we have for Weta Effects is nominated for special visual effects in a season. Also,
Guess who else is up against them in that category? Let's do a quick review of other nominees in the same category. You did mention the folks who worked on The Last of Us. Well, The Rings of Power is in this category against The Last of Us. Okay, so no irony there. Those people got hired over now for The Rings of Power. They're also competing in this category against Star Wars Andor and Star Wars The Mandalorian, season 3, and The House of the Dragon. So those are your big nominees in that category. Okay.
that's a very competitive one. I gotta say that House
Very.
of the dragon battles were incredible.
Yeah, they were. They were. If there's any, well, you know what? The special effects on Andor were also incredible, like really awesome. But
I think they were too subtle for this award. I think Rings of Power was way better than the Star Wars shows.
well, that subtlety might make them a winner. The best kind of visual effects are the ones you just don't ever see how subtle they are. And no, it's not like big, obvious, splashy things, but you never know. But it is a very competitive category. Yes.
All
it
right,
is.
the next category that's Rings of Power is nominated for this weekend at the Emmy Awards is Outstanding
Mhm.
Fantasy Sci-Fi Costumes. with our favorite person, Kate Hawley, and her whole team of
Oh,
costume
yes.
designers and costume
Yes.
supervisors.
Yes. Boy, don't they deserve it? They really deserve it. They really, all right. Kate Hawley and her team did a fabulous job. And um, I am remembering the stupid, really ignorant, stupid comments from people online who were just like, oh, we hate that armor, blah, blah, blah. And they were just looking at still
Looks like a
photos without,
T-shirt.
yeah. And they're like, and you guys, that is an undershirt. That is a what do you call an emblazoned, sewn together quilt work of an undershirt, which is what you're supposed to wear under chainmail, an undershirt. Y'all are so dumb. Anyways, Kate Hawley and her team, congratulations for your nomination, and
Do you think
you
she'll win?
really did a great job. Well, do I think that they can win? Well, they're also up against House of the Dragon and Obi-Wan Kenobi and The Mandalorian. The other two nominees that are just also Rands are Disney's Hocus Pocus 2, the sequel to Hocus Pocus, and What We Do in the Shadows.
Oh,
So, so again, House of the Dragon is up in this category against Rings of Power. It's going to be an interesting category,
I think
and
she has a
yeah, they
good
could win.
chance to win.
Oh yeah, I do. Very
And
good chance
I
to
just
win.
want to mention
Yes.
this. Congratulations to Kate Hawley. Unfortunately, she was let go from production after season 1, and she is not working on season
Yep.
2. She got nominated for an Emmy for the show and was let go.
Isn't that weird? Okay, it's like The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance. You just won an Emmy. We're gonna cancel you. Hey, Muppet Mayhem. You just won an Emmy. We're gonna cancel you. Said all their streaming companies. So I hate it. I hate that the best of the best gets Emmy awards and suddenly they're
Out
out
of a
of
job.
work.
Out of a
It's not
job.
supposed to work that way. In this town, I thought it was like if you are the best in your career, you get peer awards. They come from people who are voting on you within the industry. They are your peers within the industry. They're not outsiders. It's not like the MTV Fan Awards. This is the Interior Awards for people who are also visual effects artists. They're also costume designers. These are your peers voting for you. And when you end up winning by a vote of your wonderful creative peers, you're supposed to have your career go even further and improve, not get canned, not get removed from the job after you did such a great job. I really don't get the logic. I don't.
Well,
And
and then
I don't
the
know.
final award that Rings of Power is nominated for this weekend is Outstanding Sound Editing for a
Mm.
comedy or drama series. Of course, there's the whole music and sound. This is the yeah,
Oh
not the
yeah.
composing, but just mixing all of the sound. It's for sound
Sound
editing,
editing.
including
And this
dialogue, ADR,
mhm.
sound
Yep,
effects, music editing, Foley,
everything.
everything. I
Yep.
believe this is also up against Andor, which I might give Andor more credit for sound editing than anything else because uh, when you watch Andor, there's no question that where you're at based on the sounds around you.
Yes. Oh, very true. This category, unlike the other one, is for a single episode, and they submitted for nomination Udun. Udun is the big terraforming of Mordor, where the whole Rube Goldberg machine is kicked into action by the bloody blade and Waldreg, and suddenly, boom, the volcano blows up. And that is the episode that they submitted for best sound editing.
Well,
So, yeah,
so Cliff, out of the 6 awards, they are all part of the Creative Emmys, Creative Arts Emmys, which
yes,
will not be on TV this weekend. It's a private ceremony on Saturday, so we will know Saturday night whether Rings of Power is officially an Emmy-winning TV series. Cliff, you've seen the other nominees. Does Rings of Power actually have a chance to take home an Emmy, even if it's not on TV?
yes, it sure does. It does have a chance to take home an
You
Emmy.
think so?
I do. Yep. Um, the original main title music might be the one that they give to Howard Shore, just because, you know, uh, but there's also Danny Elfman. Howard Shore competing with Danny Elfman in this category is just wild to me for Wednesday, you know?
Look,
For the,
I think it's got good competition for sound editing. Think it has great competition for visual effects. The visual
yeah,
effects are the best part of the show. But let's be honest, the final episode of House of the Dragon, when two dragons are fighting with each
yeah,
other in the storm,
yeah,
it was just and it was photo real. I don't know.
yeah, it
They
was.
did a really good job on the visual effects, and of course, Boba Fett. I was shocked. I was shocked and surprised at the end of the Mandalorian when, in one of the final episodes, he walks into the bar cantina and there's a fully CG purple alien dude, and
Yeah,
he looks as real as everybody else in the bar. And it really, after the show had gone so far with the puppets,
yeah,
the droid puppets and the Baby Yoda puppets, to see a
yeah.
fully CG character in the Mandalorian universe and it looked that good. I mean, they're all deserving, including Rings of Power. But I do think Howard Shore has a
Oh, you're talking about
reputation.
Zeb. You mean the
Yes.
big alien guy at the bar?
Yeah.
That was Zeb. Zeb is a famous character from the animated series Star
I don't
Wars
watch
Rebels.
cartoons. I don't watch cartoons.
I know. That's why I'm giving you the context because you don't watch the animated Clone Wars shows. But if you knew Rebels, everybody in their living room was going, "Gasp! That's that famous character from many, many seasons of Rebels." And they did recreate him
Well,
excellent, so
if you're in an
beautiful in real
explaining
life at the
mood,
bar.
Cliff, explain why it is so telling that Rings of Power is not nominated in any major categories.
You mean like best drama series, best actors, best actresses? Yeah, best directing. And most importantly, why didn't it get best drama? House of the Dragon got the nomination for best drama series. And that's what the Lord of the Rings of Power was going for. You know they were going for it.
A hundred.
And
They don't. You don't spend $1 billion
you bet
and not expect either huge audience
exactly.
or
Exactly.
huge awards. And
Prestige.
it got
Yeah.
neither. And
Yeah.
the
I know.
and one of the telling reasons, Daisy Kim says so telling. I can tell you what's telling
Yes.
about how disappointed the Papa Company is. Let me bring it up on screen. This is the Prime FYC for your consideration awards website. You need an access code. You need to be a voting member to access this. They've listed all of the TV shows that they are proud of. These are all the TV shows that they are proud to announce that they would like awards for, like to be in the conversation for awards. This is their
FYC.
Amazon's official FYC. You can see Reacher, Jack Ryan, Wheel of Time, Citadel, a show that has already been canceled. Wait, no, did it get canceled? I forget.
What?
Carnival Row, I think, is on its last season, but no Rings of Power. They've
Hmm.
taken Rings of Power, even though Rings of Power has a chance to win an Emmy this weekend. Rings of Power has been completely taken off the Amazon Awards website.
Do you know what
Absolutely
that
zero
suggests to me?
support. What does
That
it
suggests that it's going to be delayed to 2025. That's what that suggests to me. I certainly don't know. I don't know because I'm not aware of anything, but put this as a little feather in my cap. If I get this right, then I get an extra feather right here in my hat, in my Stetson. If they took it off of the Emmy consideration main page, that means they're going to go the entire year without seeking its qualification. And the reason why is because it won't be submitted. It won't qualify because it won't broadcast. That's all I'm saying. I cannot elucidate further, but it seems to me if you can infer, if you could be intellectually honest and reasonable at the same time that you're inferring things, it means to me they're not supporting the show for awards support because they don't have a show to support. It will not come out during the year. that means they're just probably going to put it on the for your consideration board next year when it exists, when it's out there, and it will be a competitor. So, what do you think, Justin? Do you think
Well,
it's a litmus test for that, or is that wrong-headed? What do you think?
I think there's a lot to read into this, but Cliff, there's a question from the chat room I think you need to answer. Do you think it will last its 5 seasons?
Um, if they don't, yeah, yes, I do. I do because of Jeff Bezos' pride, his personal sense of ego that's attached to this. That's why I would instinctually say, yeah, because it's not just a price tag. You've got somebody else's ego. You have the ego of the Lex Luthor of all streaming platforms, Mr. Jeff Bezos. And because his ego is attached, then yeah, they'll probably go through with it no matter how good or bad or good or bad. It might go up and down, up and down. Who knows? But if they don't, let's hypothesize. If they just do a couple of seasons and never finish, that will be the biggest stain of embarrassment on the studio, and it will cause endless
On Jeff
miles
personally.
of. Not only will Jeff take it personally, but everybody in the business and all the people who are writing columns and columns for newspapers and magazines, we'll be talking about it for years and years and years. There will be books written and major movies to document why they went into a $1 billion franchise and then backed out of it and never completed their full commitment. So, yeah, I think they will. And if they don't, it will be the most disastrous, highly visible, negative publicity that studio could ever face. And they won't be able to face down that kind of negative publicity. So, given the choice, cataclysmic negative publicity from not finishing the 5 seasons, or imagine that they just keep it going and they try to push and pull and bring it to where they want to get it. Maybe they'll just get it over the finish line by the time they get to seasons 4 and 5. We hope. I do. I hope that they do well. I wish that they would do great. I wish them the very, very best at Prime Video. I wish that they would improve upon that 6 out of 10 first season that they did, because even though it looked like a 10, sounded like a 10, and was as gorgeous as a 10, the way that it was all cobbled together in terms of narrative and storyline and narrative thrust and thematic holding power, it's just a 6 out of 10. So I want them to improve. There's room for improvement. I would love to see them really knock it out of the park. But you know what? Who knows? I'm not the greatest prognosticator, but I will tell you it would be a far, far worse decision to cancel and not finish all 5 seasons based upon how much they have put into it and how much a certain billionaire has put his own personal, reputation on the line.
Daisy Kim in the chat room says an 8-episode season every 3 years is not a great plan.
You're right. Absolutely. And I agree. And other folks in the chat have said very well said, Daisy Kim. And that's true. An 8-episode season every 3 years would be miserable and it would not work. It wouldn't
It doesn't
work.
let the zeitgeist to get warmed up.
Nope. Mm-mm. It doesn't. But then again,
The Crawling
there was a
Chaos
strike.
says with
Hold
such
on.
long
There was
wait
a
times
strike.
between
So
seasons, they should have done a second age anthology show, each season focused on a different big event. And that's something I championed for
I did
many
too.
months. We
Yep.
talked about this, how wonderful it would
Yeah.
be to be a self-contained, like, American Horror Story anthology where one season is one complete story
Yes.
from the Tales of Middle-earth.
Yeah, I love that. Tales from Middle-earth, the Chronicles of Middle-earth, the Tales of Middle-earth,
And I think
Legends of Middle-earth.
that's kind of where they're going, because on season 2 it's all about the fall of Eregion, so we're going to get that complete tale. Season 3 supposedly will be the fall of Numenor. Season 4, it's got to be the founding of all of the lands, how Middle Earth is divided amongst the kings of men and elves. And then season 5 ends with the Battle of Last Alliance. So there is an element of anthology. I think the problem is that
Mhm.
nothing in season 1 is anything Tolkien wrote. You know, the founding of Mordor, that's not interesting enough. They
The
tried to
terraforming of Mordor. No.
they spent $1
Um,
billion trying to make that interesting. It's like that is just background for Tolkien's true story of agelessness and deathlessness.
Indeed. How interesting that if they had done an anthology series, like putting some characters into one season that don't have to appear until maybe another season,
Right.
you know? Yeah, they can just come and go, like Otaku Senpai just very adroitly pointed out. That's really cool.
We've got so much to talk about. I just wanted to
My
mention real
goodness.
quick,
My
according
goodness.
to the updated Weta Effects website, Weta Effects is currently in production on House of Dragons Season 2. Of course, Weta Effects just won the Oscar for Avatar Way of the Water. Weta
Hmm.
Effects is responsible for all the digital stuff for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and the Avatar movies, and the Planet of the Apes movies. Weta Effects is one of, if not the preeminent visual effects house in the entire business if you want photo real fantasy storytelling. And now they are signed up to do House of the Dragon Season 2, but not Lord of the Rings Rings of Power.
Oh dear. Well,
Well, our big story today talks about this guy. This is Simon Tolkien.
there's Simon, the man of the hour.
Who is Simon Tolkien? Cliff, let's start there. Is he a brother, a grandson, a great grandson? Where does he fit into the genealogy compared to JRR Tolkien?
Simon is his grandson, and he's made a name for himself by writing books like No Man's Land, and they're like legal thrillers, like John Grisham thrillers. He started writing in the year 2000. So, and he's written black comedies, and he's written the Inspector Trave trilogy. He's had his own trilogy of books about Inspector Trave, and he's this guy who's, if I'm not mistaken, yeah, he's in this like, crime solving legal thrillers and crime thriller kind of novels. So, um, and courtroom dramas. Okay, you could say they're courtroom dramas, and those are the
Crime
kind of
and
books he
Courtroom is
publishes.
kind of like
Yeah.
unlocking the mystery.
Hmm.
Cliff, I believe we had video footage of Priscilla and Christopher Tolkien saying that their father did not deal with murder mystery of the week type storytelling, that
No.
mystery boxing was not appropriate for Middle Earth and their father's stories. So this is kind of the rebellious youth from what you're
Yep.
describing.
Yes. In 2016, he wrote a World War One novel concurrent with the 100th anniversary of the Battle of the Somme. And that is of particular historical interest to Tolkien fans because when he was a young soldier, he was a signal operations officer. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien saw action in the Battle of the Somme. So, on the 100th anniversary of that battle, there's Simon Tolkien writing this novel about a poor English child and a young adult, beginning with episodes of labor unrest in London and on to the strikes in coal mining communities, class distinctions, and the home front battle experiences of World War One. So Simon Tolkien acknowledges that the experiences of one of his lead characters, named Adam Rain, only superficially resemble the situations faced by his grandfather in the same large and long battle. But he said he wanted to write something that paid tribute to his grandfather's pivotal war experience as a young man, only a few years older than the age of the protagonist of No Man's Land, which is
Let's be
another
honest.
book that he wrote.
Nobody has read his books. Nobody here has read his books. Nobody here
Maybe.
has ever heard of
Let's
his
ask.
books.
I haven't. I haven't. I've never read any of his books at all. But let's ask anyone in the chat, have you ever read any of grandson Simon Tolkien's books, or especially this interesting one about the Battle of the Somme, which
Just
was
any
inspired
books, any of his
any of
books.
them?
Uh, uh, uh,
Okay.
but for
Yeah.
the most part, nobody really has read. But he is currently the head of the Tolkien estate when it comes to business and creative matters. Is this true,
hmm
Cliff?
Say that again. Sorry.
Simon Tolkien is the current head of the estate
No.
when it comes to creative matters.
Is he? Oh, is he? Um,
We're going to get into that
I
right now. So,
maybe, but here's why. Here's why he might be. I'd say because he's the only son of Christopher. All right. So look, Tolkien had four children: John, Priscilla, Christopher, and I forget the name of his fourth child. Um, so J.R.R. Tolkien had four kids. I think Christopher was his youngest boy, and Simon Tolkien is the only son. The if I'm not mistaken, he is the only son
Michael.
of Christopher Tolkien. Okay, so if that's the case, um, yeah, he's the only child of Christopher Tolkien and his first wife. And his parents were separated when he was 5 years old, and he
Well,
grew up with
anyone
his
can read
mother.
the Wikipedia, but we're here to talk about what we know about it right now. And right
Um,
now,
does
this interview from on the OneRing.net from 2012, it says Mr. Tolkien, Simon Tolkien talks about having a falling out with his father.
yes, he does.
And you know, he didn't like the movies at first, the Peter Jackson movies. He's like, it was like being hit by a juggernaut. 1 minute I was Simon Tolkien, a barrister from London. The next I was J.R.R. Tolkien's grandson. This might sound strange, but I began to lose sight of who I was. It was as if me, Simon, had disappeared. I felt suffocated. Simon Tolkien goes on and says, in hindsight, I think all of my anger was being driven by this feeling that I was trapped. All I was ever going to be was the grandson of a very famous writer. That was the sum total of my achievements.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Cliff, does that give you perspective into the man?
It does. I have perspective that I didn't have before from learning about this, as well as keeping in mind if Simon had been a child of one of the other children, Michael or John or Priscilla, it might have been different. But Simon was the son of Christopher Tolkien, and Christopher Tolkien was the torchbearer, the main intellectual property rights champion. He was the dragon who protected the golden hoard of his father's legacy. And because Simon is Christopher's boy, then I would say it's quite likely that Simon Tolkien has the larger share of personal controlling interest in the estate.
Well, we'll get
Maybe
to that in a
yeah,
sec with
maybe
actual
so.
facts, but
Yeah,
this interview from 2012, so almost 12 years ago, Cliff,
yes.
um, what are your thoughts on his comments of being all I'm ever going to be is my grandfather's progeny, basically? Like, he sounds defeated.
Yes.
Like, even though
Yeah.
he had published all those books, none of it which we've
hmm
heard of read, but he's
But
a barrister from London.
mhm.
The family has enough money
And
that
that's an
he
accomplishment in
does
itself to be a barrister in London. That's quite an
right.
accomplishment in itself. And to be able to write any damn thing and get anything published at all, that's pretty cool all on its own. Whether or not you hit the bestsellers charts or not, that's beside the point. Just the fact that you got something printed and got it out there. And you know what I'd say? He's a sad sack. You know what he sounds like psychologically? Self-defeating. That's what I would get as a direct first impression is that he's being a sad sack about it and being a self-defeatist from that point of view. You do not pull yourself up by the creative bootstraps and get your own work done unless you feel like you have the capacity. If you have the capacity and the intelligence and you've got the wherewithal to go through with it and get the creative work done, then give yourself a pat on the back and get it done. I mean, all right, take a look at the way Leonard Maltin has his daughter helping him with his career. As he's gotten older, Leonard Maltin's daughter, she's not sitting there saying, "Oh, all I'm ever going to be is my father's daughter, and I can never." She's come out to do film commentary and to run film festivals and to do all kinds of great, energizing things
Even Martin Scorsese's
on her
daughter,
own.
it is
Yes,
like her own
exactly.
person, and bringing her
Exactly.
dad along,
Her own
knowing
person. Yeah.
knowing the power of that fame and fortune and that
Hmm.
legacy,
Hmm.
she can benefit from. Those comments that Simon
Yeah.
Tolkien made, feels like he's more burdened by the success of his grandfather
Yeah,
than.
instead of embracing where it could go and how it could, be an interesting wave that could take him places, the nepotism wave, instead he's like, I'm burdened with this. Woe is me. I can't find my own self-identity unless I do something. And this is leading us to the major point of our story. He wanted to do something to strengthen his own standing as a creative. And I mean that
Well,
with the capital
and
C,
before
a
we get
creative.
there, there's this interview that he did with PBS.
Oh yeah.
Diane
Hey,
Ream.
Sophia
Diane.
Coppola, great mention of Sophia Coppola as a great example. Yeah.
Yeah, look, you don't have to be burdened by your family's legacy. By the way,
Right.
there are so
Right.
many Coppolas. There are so many Coppolas that have gone on to do great things. Look at the producing credits of Roman Coppola. Look at Nicolas Cage,
Hmm.
Timothy
Hmm.
Chalamet. Like, there's so many people in the Coppola family. It is not a burden. It's an easy ticket. It's a door opener. Anyway, so Simon Tolkien,
Yeah, exactly.
we've just established that Simon Tolkien felt burdened by his grandfather and his father's legacy. In this hour-long interview with PBS from 2010, Tuesday, April
Mm.
13th, 2010, Simon Tolkien, The Inheritance. It's a wonderful 1 hour audio conversation with Simon Tolkien alone. This is while his dad is still alive. His dad is definitely in control of everything. Simon is here living in California, doing whatever he wants. Some quotes from this 2010 interview.
All right.
Quote, Simon Tolkien: "My problem with the films was I think Jackson was too faithful to the books. He
Oh
kind of
dear.
put too much into it, and there was too much going on. I would like to have had more character and perhaps follow his own course." Let me repeat. Simon Tolkien, in the years of The Hobbit, was quoted on PBS saying, "My problem with the films," not PBS, NPR, "my problems with the films was that I think Jackson was kind of too faithful to the books. He
Hmm.
kind of put too much into it, and there was too much going on.
Hmm.
I would have liked, perhaps, him following his own course."
Hmm.
Cliff, your thoughts on Simon Tolkien saying the problem with the films was they were too faithful?
Well, um, that is so weird. It is such a direct contradiction to what his father Christopher complained about in the French press, that the films were really, really negatively affecting Tolkien's literary standing and literary legacy. As so completely opposite. You cannot have a more polarized and opposite attuned um, energy than you would between Christopher Tolkien and Simon Tolkien. They could not be further apart on this issue. quite surprising. Um, it
Oh,
suggests that Simon Tolkien is willing to play fast and loose with
in
the literary legacy. It really suggests that he's open to revisionism. It suggests that he's open to being very what you'd call lateral, widely lateral in how you can adapt or approach the work. And it sounds like if he said that Peter Jackson's films were too faithful, and they were not too faithful. Otherwise, Faramir would not have dragged the hobbits all the way to Osgiliath. In that case, um, if Simon thinks that Peter and Fran and Philippa were being too faithful, air quotes, then that means he's open to revisionism and he's open to playing with a very different set of parameters. Maybe he's open to really wild and different variations on a theme and interpretations on the works,
well, Cliff,
perhaps.
in this NPR interview, there is additional context, Cliff, that you need to know. The falling out
Mm,
Simon Tolkien had with his father is specifically about the films. As we all know, Christopher hated the films.
mhm.
Simon loved the films, wanted more out of the films, more changes out
Yes,
of the films. And that
yes.
was ultimately the falling out where they did not talk for a decade because Simon wanted to be a movie producer and
Mhm,
Christopher hated the medium of movies and how they distracted from the
mhm.
quality of the
Yeah.
books.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So Simon Tolkien admits that the falling out with his own father is over his passion to be a movie producer and make Lord of the Rings movies, something his father Christopher did not like or enjoy. And then
Wow.
in that
Wow.
context, Cliff, revisit this. My problem with the films was that I think Jackson was kind of too faithful to the books.
Boy, that is such a statement. Coming from somebody within the Tolkien family, that is such a statement. You know, people in the chat saying, oh, there's a lot of commentary in the chat right now, but it's very clear that the disagreement between family members on the inside it hasn't been discussed with us. We haven't seen it publicized. We have to dig and dig to get these details and then infer in between these lines.
We're
And
not
I
in
can
you can
infer,
listen. You can listen to that
yeah,
NPR interview. It's an
okay,
hour long, and you can hear
okay,
what words he hits with the tone of voice. So we're quoting Simon himself
yeah,
saying these
yeah,
things that he hated the legacy. He hated not existing. He hated as we just talked about. So when Christopher Tolkien passed away,
hmm
control of the estate went to the next in line. And now it was Simon's turn. And now we come to Amazon's Rings of Power when the
hmm
Tolkien estate, under control of Christopher approved of the deal. Christopher approved of the deal before he retired to
yes,
sell the TV rights to Amazon. And as part of that deal, required that the Tolkien estate have a seat at the creative table. The Tolkien
correct.
estate has veto power on any and all stories told by Amazon. So here's
Which we
how
have
much.
consistently reported for years. We have said that for years.
So I want to show
Consistently.
you just how much control the same Simon Tolkien we just talked about,
Yep.
who didn't like his grandfather's legacy, thought it was burden. He didn't. He thought Peter Jackson didn't go was too loyal to the books. Here it
Oh
is.
man. Oh man.
Simon Tolkien, quote, when talking about Rings of Power, pitching the Rings of Power, quote, Simon Tolkien had an idea for the show he wanted. A source familiar with the show's production told the Wall Street Journal. This is the Wall Street Journal reporting this. and they went and pitched it without knowing it. The younger Tolkien, Simon, who controls his grandfather's estate, was further impressed by Payne speaking Elvish and quoting the late author in their initial conversations.
Wow.
Let me repeat that again.
Wow.
Simon Tolkien had an idea for the show he wanted, and McPayne went and pitched it without them even knowing it was the same pitch that he wanted to do. Simon, this is the control that Simon has over the whole show.
Do you know what? That's very revealing. That is so revealing. That means that Simon Tolkien, who is willing to play fast and loose with adaptations of his grandfather's work, has been working at this to get where we are with the Rings of Power.
Everything in the show Rings of Power was approved and supported by Simon Tolkien, the current head of the Tolkien estate.
Wow.
Nothing gets past him that he doesn't want in there, and nothing and things that he requests have incredible power. He has so much power that if Simon comes up with an idea, they almost have to put it in. Whether it makes any sense or not, they have to put it in because he's in that much control.
It makes you wonder where the other grandchildren are involved, if anywhere.
They're not.
You know,
they're not.
We just don't know, do we? We don't know how much of the existing estate.
We have talked to them in person, and Simon is the only one involved in the show.
Of all the other grandchildren, Simon's the only one involved.
Correct.
Well, let us connect the dots then. He thought Peter Jackson was too faithful. He was uncomfortable continually being under his grandfather's shadow. While Christopher was alive, Simon's father, Christopher, would not allow certain things to happen. But then right before he stepped down, before he died, we must clarify that Christopher Tolkien stepped away from his position as the Grand Protector, the Grand, protector, the dragon protecting the wonderful treasure. And it became then, going down the line of succession, it then became Simon's major thing. And they got involved with Prime Video, and they made the deal. And even while Professor Tolkien was alive, admittedly, we've learned this from his letters, it was either art or cash, and lots of it. Remember that Professor Tolkien, while he was alive, said he would settle for art or cash, and lots of it.
Well, quote, they know unquote. They got the cash on this.
Wow.
And they got a level of control that Simon currently wields on behalf of the Tolkien estate. They have empowered Simon as the next of kin after his father passed away. So Simon had an idea for the show in his head already. Never mind who was pitching. Peter Jackson was pitching. Who else pitched? The Russo brothers pitched. Young Aragorn pitched. Everybody had great ideas.
Yeah,
and it's Simon Tolkien who had an idea for the show, and McPayne were lucky enough to have the same idea, and they walked in, and unbeknownst to McPayne, they pitched a show that Simon already wanted to tell because there was a lot of wiggle room for adding things to the Legendarium. And
in that second age,
Simon's putting his stamp on the Legendarium with this show.
Do we see Simon? Well, is his name credited as an executive producer?
Yes.
Is Simon credited in the show?
He is credited in the credits of any episode of Rings of Power as a consultant, I believe.
consulting producer, maybe.
Consulting
Oh,
producer or
that's
something like that. But he
interesting.
he is I believe he might even be an executive producer. But so Cliff, we learned about the character of the man
Yeah.
and how he was feeling as Lord of the Rings became the behemoth tentpole
He he's
event for the
he's
whole world.
credited as a series. He's credited as a series consultant on only 3 episodes: episode 1, 6, and 8.
Those are
And
the
guess what?
Haladriel
Someone in the chat,
episodes.
yeah, yeah, and someone in the chat said, "I really, really hope that he's not responsible for that Mithril, the Mithril conspiracy story. What is that?" And if I'm not mistaken, that's what happens in episode
I think
in those
that's
episodes.
5. I think that's
That's
5.
in episode 5? Okay.
Haladriel is the main story in 6, 8, in 1, 6, and 8. Uh,
Okay.
that's interesting. So, I think a lot of an unfairly lot of internet conversation on why Rings of Power is not connecting with audiences has been laid at the hands of the writers of the show. And I've always disagreed with that because I think the writers are some of the best television writers in the whole world. They're hired to do a job. They're not the showrunners, and they're definitely not a Tolkien.
Right.
Who is really making the decisions for these things that we don't like? Whether it's
Ah,
Haladriel, whether it's Mithril, whether it's Shorty, Galadriel, I don't know. But
I see where you're
here
going.
we just found out, we can now confirm through all of these interviews from the last 2 decades on NPR, on the OneRing.net, in the Wall Street Journal. 3 of the most reputable organizations still around. You cannot, like the stellar reputations.
Wow.
Simon Tolkien, the man burdened by his grandfather, who fell out with his father over his passion for the movies, who, quote, says Peter Jackson was too faithful to the books, is now in charge of Rings of
No,
Power.
I mean, okay. You know what? It's
Cliff,
all
this is
kind
a
of
lot to
fitting,
take in. It's a lot to take
but
in.
but when you put lines between the dots and do the connecting logical thread, you can see what you've got. You've got what we're looking at possibly is the profile of a disgruntled man who didn't feel like being a nepo baby of the greatest author uh, of all time was going to bring him any satisfaction in his life, and that it was going to burden him. And he felt like he wanted to do other things to make his stamp on the world and can't get out under his grandfather's shadow. But lucky for him, his father's Christopher Tolkien, and that means by genetic happenstance, Simon is in the position that he can be in to now steer the ship. The Tolkien estate can now be steered in a different direction. And lo and behold, it looks like J.D. Payne and uh, Patrick McKay and J.D. Payne were probably on a little psychic brainwave with Simon across thousands and thousands of miles. Maybe they just somehow knew.
Cliff,
But
question from the chat room. Nigel wants to
wow,
know, is being too faithful really a bad thing?
is being too faithful really a bad thing? I mean, I don't know. There's a movie version of Dostoevsky's War and Peace that is about 8 or 9 hours long. Yeah, it is. So yeah, it's possible to be overly lavishly faithful. It is possible, you know?
The closest example I can give about this faithful to the book and being successful in its own right is The Shining. Stephen King's
Mm.
The Shining. Stephen King hates the Jack Nicholson movie. He hates it with a passion. He
The
hates it like
original Kubrick film?
Stephen King hates the Shining Kubrick film as much as Christopher Tolkien hated Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings. One of the most successful movies of all time. A legendary picture that will go down as one of the top 100 films of all time, The Shining.
Yes.
The author hates it. Then there's a sequel called Doctor Sleep. And
Which was pretty good.
it's pretty good. Stars Ewan
I,
McGregor.
I liked it.
And Stephen King loves it. He
Yeah.
loves it. He loves it because Doctor Sleep found a way to thread the needle of being loyal to the Kubrick lore and loyal to the book that Stephen King originally wrote. And if you want if you want to watch a movie that the author approves, you watch Doctor Sleep. And if you want a director that can thread that needle between the expectations of a movie-going audience and the expectations of the author's estate and book lovers, that director of Doctor Sleep is Mike Flanagan.
That's right. It was a Mike Flanagan film. Yeah.
Mike Flanagan. Midnight Mass, Mike Flanagan. Fall of the House
Yeah.
of Usher, Mike Flanagan. And
That's
now,
right.
overall deal
Wow.
at Amazon
Wow.
Prime, Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan is currently an in-house showrunner, producer, director for Amazon exclusively. So,
Oh boy.
if you want someone who has the technical skill and the storytelling ability to make a good movie from a franchise that people love, The Shining, but turn it into something that the authors can appreciate on its own,
Yeah.
Dr. Sleep, Mike Flanagan did that. And he can do it for Lord of the Rings.
Wow. He sure could. Wow. Well, quite impressive, don't you think? That we're discovering maybe some of the things that happened with this TV show weren't corporate driven. Maybe they weren't even J.D. Payne or Patrick McKay driven, not by the showrunners. Maybe these choices were driven by Simon Tolkien.
Well, here's what I think happened is that
Okay.
Simon Tolkien has an amount of control on the show. Amazon has its own producers that know how to tell a good story and know what's going to sell. And McPain have their own ideas of what story they want to tell, independent of everybody else. From the J.J. Abrams School of Filmmaking, let's make what we want, not what anybody else wants.
Mm-hmm.
I
Right.
think Simon, J.D. Payne, and Patrick McKay teamed up for a political powerhouse. And you could not get anything past all three of them. If they are so aligned and in tune with each other, Simon Tolkien, J.D. Payne, Patrick McKay, that means their wildest ideas make it to screen no matter what.
Wow.
And other voices maybe do not get the influence that maybe they should have. I don't know. But it is
Wow.
interesting to have showrunners and the Tolkien family aligned this tight like never before. And that's the show that we currently have. Final thoughts, Cliff.
My goodness gracious. Can it be possible that all the things that we've been arguing about as fans for all this time, and all the things that have been topics of contentious debate, not just contentious debate, but topics of online arguments and people saying, "Oh, wait, don't worry. Don't worry, the Tolkien estate is involved. They're not going to go too far astray. The estate is involved." mean, we've always reported that there would be a manner of temperance. There would be a manner of avoiding extremes in this adaptation because there would be an automatic veto power by the estate. And that would be a mode of temperance that would stop things from going too far astray from the books. And
So
now
how
it
do you
looks like,
feel, Cliff, if the Tolkien estate itself is quoted as saying the problem with
yeah,
Peter Jackson's films is they
yeah,
were
yeah, yeah.
too faithful to the books?
Well, then, it looks like we have to get a grasp on this differently now. We do. We have to get a grasp on this differently and understand that it's not some nebulous, disembodied thing called the estate. It's actually a person, and the person behind it has motivations. And his motivations behind it are he wanted to be involved in Hollywood productions, wanted to be involved in producing, wants to make a name for himself that will heighten his profile in not just be underneath the shadow of his great grandfather all the time, but to have his stamp on entertainment. He wants to have a chance to cash in on all this energy and zeitgeist and all this attention, and he wants to do it his own way. But like, I'm struggling with the idea that if he really wanted to disassociate, and say, "Oh, I'll never be anything. I need to disassociate myself from my grandfather's shadow." It seems that he's um, quite willing to go really into the weeds more and more and more in his grandfather's shadow in an effort to stake out his own claim on it and make his own lasting historical impression on it. If it ever comes out as documented, like if we get documentation and like full reporting on this, then it will go down as history in as one of the literary legacy family stories where the grandson decided to go in a very different direction than the father and the grandfather and make things different. And boy, won't that be a story.
Well, it looks like that's what's happening, Cliff, because we have
Wow.
quotes. We have quotes from the Wall Street
Yeah.
Journal,
Yeah.
NPR, and so many interviews over the years. So there it is. That is Torn Tuesday, the first Torn Tuesday of 2024. A huge year for Tolkien fans. We're hoping to get through it. We're hoping to see a Rings of Power trailer at the Super Bowl in about a month's
Hmm.
time. We're
Yes, we
hoping
are.
that War of the
Yes, we are.
Rohirrim is released in
Yes.
December and we can spend Christmas in Middle Earth yet again together in a darkened theater. That's going to be so much fun. Where is Patrick McCain and JD Payne? We still do not have any confirmation from anyone at Amazon or inside the production that they've
That's
been
right.
rehired since the strike ended.
Since the end of
But
the strike.
season
We
3
don't
has
have a
been
word.
greenlit. And will they continue on the show? I don't know. But Mike Flanagan is right there, Amazon. He's in your wheelhouse and he knows
Wow.
how to do the work. That's all I have to say.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Oh, very good, Justin. Thank you for helping us present the facts in a linear way so that we can draw our own conclusions. Everybody, let's talk about this more while we're spending the next few days digesting this fascinating, excuse me, but this is just fascinating
It's a lot
causation.
to take in.
Yeah, but I mean, if there is causality between Simon wanting to do things his own way, then wow, he certainly is working out deals with Prime Video to do things his own way. And the result is the Rings of Power. And let's hope that things get better and bigger and brighter as we move forward into this new year. So many blessings to all of you. I just want to say Happy New Year. Many blessings to our connected family, our extended family, and our immediate family. All of us folks, you fine feathered friends. You're all friends of the OneRing.net and friends of JRR Tolkien. Most importantly, oh yeah. Someone said there's commercial breaks. Um, wow. Here's what we got to do. We're gonna try to dig and get more details on this story going forward because it certainly does seem that there's one person in the family estate who seems to be a more driving force and is making more important decisions and directives with the production of this series than we really thought. So that's worth examining, and it's worth understanding better. Um, the biggest news for all of us is to remember the man who actually started it all. And we observe his birthday tomorrow. Tomorrow being January 3rd. In many places around the planet, even in New Zealand right now, it is already January 3rd. So happy birthday, J.R.R. Tolkien, the greatest author of the 20th century and the most influential author in my lifetime. And many blessings to all you wonderful people out there. A reminder when it is time to do the birthday toast. Tomorrow, wherever you are, in whatever city around the world, whatever town or sleepy little village you are in, it will be at 9 p.m. when you raise your glass and say to the professor, clink, and clink your glass and cheers at 9 p.m. tomorrow, January 3rd, around the world to celebrate the birthday of John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. So don't forget, gather with your friends and have a nice shepherd's pie and a good glass of ale and do your toast at 9 p.m. But as news continues to develop, we at theonering.net are going to give you more news and mischief and information. Come and look at our website and get to read the articles. Join us on our Discord and on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook and YouTube. Click like and subscribe. Please do. You can follow us on the One Ring Net. Take out the dot. You can follow me, QuickBeam2000, Clifford Broadway on Instagram and Twitter. Boy, oh boy, it's going to be a big year. Lots of exciting things coming up. And Justin, thank you for helping us put this show together. I am your amiable host, Clifford Broadway, now signing off. But before we go, as I always like to tell you guys, be gentle with one another, okay? Be good and be kind. And let's make things really, really better for all of us this year. Now's our chance. Now is the time. So many blessings to you all again. So I like to say good night and good luck. Or better yet, buenos noches y buena suerte. Bye.